Hello everyone, welcome to MAPIC India Retail Leadership Series with Women Special during the International Women's Day week. With over 95 plus years of grace and legacy, Nalli is today an iconic heritage brand steeped in tradition. By virtue of staying true to its core values of trust and quality, Nalli has earned the patronage of customers across generations. Today we have Lavanya Nalli, Vice Chairperson of Nalli Group of Companies, who have come a long way since she joined her 95 years plus old family business. She has established her own line of stores named Nalli Next, showcasing a contemporary and chic clothing range, and gone on to win many accolades for her work. She is an inspiration to many women, and today it's truly our pleasure to have her as our guest for MAPIC India Retail Leadership Series Women Special. Lavanya, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Reema, and I'm quite honored to be on this.
Great. Lavanya, before we start, I want to know, are you the first woman in your family to enter the family business?
Yes, I was the first woman to enter it at that point in time. Now, of course, we have more people who have joined the family business.
Okay, great. And how was it received by the family at that time?
I joined in 2005, so that was quite a very different ecosystem in India back then. To give you a context of the landscape, the VC world didn't really exist. We had a few private equity investors, but I don't think the VC world really existed. Startups were non-existent. If anybody wanted to start out on their own business, the only option for you was to borrow from your family, go to a bank, and the bank will ask you for a personal guarantee and for all of your assets and everything. And then on the basis of it, you will get debt, right? And then you need to make those interest payments. So the opportunity and the landscape was quite different for people joining the workforce back then. The retail and consumer landscape was also quite different. There were very few malls in India, and the high street locations, mom and pop stores were still the prevailing, I would say, retail landscape back then. So that was kind of the ecosystem into which I had entered, and the larger societal aspects of it also. If you're asking as a woman what it was like, I would say that I was gently tolerated. That's the word that I would use, because the idea and very openly, I think both my dad and all of the leadership at that time, the prevailing mindset was, oh, it's unusual that a woman is wanting to be in the business, and that too, why our family business? Why can't she just go work somewhere else? She's an engineer. So there was a bit of passive resistance and more of curiosity and more of, I think, indifference. And the prevailing thought was, okay, let her do. Let's see how much can she mess up. So it was more that way.
Okay, great. So Lavanya, when you imagine an empowered woman, what do you see?
I think, I'll be honest, I don't think India is fully there yet, although I have to give a lot of weight to the progress that we have made in leaps and bounds over the last few years, right? So we constantly keep improving, but I don't think that, but I feel that we still have a lot of way to go till we hit a point where we can truly say that all women in our society at every level are empowered. To me, the word and the definition of that is having the freedom to take the calls, to maximize your sense of purpose, meaning, happiness in life. And for that to happen, there has to be financial independence. There has to be education, right? There has to be awareness and access to opportunities. There has to be protection from the judicial system. So I feel these are, to me, and these are, the word empowerment means different things to different people. But to me, when I look at it holistically, as any individual, right, and even as a woman as well, if you say, look, this is what my path to happiness looks like, what's stopping you? And if there are institutional sort of hurdles in your way, then I think those are the places that I would say all of us, right, at every level in society, as people who are running corporates, as people who are within corporates in managerial roles, as people who are founders or entrepreneurs, as people who are policymakers, I think as people who are individuals, right, because you have a position of influence even within your own family ecosystem. Everyone who's a mom, a daughter, a sister, who has in any capacity, right, has a position of influence. I would say in all of our different roles that we play in the world and in society, to really look at what's holding back women, and in our capacity to work towards removing those structural sort of hurdles, so that each woman can really chart out a path for herself.
Great. And Lavanya, are you trying to change the brand image of Nalli to make it more appealing to the young generation? And what made you turn your attention to new stores, formats, and products?
Okay, so I'll take the second question first, and then that may probably just answer it. Nalli is a heritage brand. It's a trusted brand name, right? We've been there for 95 years. We're coming up on our centennial very soon. If you ask a lot of women who buy saris on a regular basis, wear saris on a regular basis, who really know their saris, and we have done this in brand surveys, right? The top of mind recall for Nalli, the salience for Nalli is off the charts. Invariably, you will hear, right, 9 out of 10 women who really buy their saris and know their saris, we will mention it. And here's the interesting part, if you speak to a lot of women who don't wear saris, they borrow saris, they're not very familiar with that product category. The names that they say are the names that they are exposed to through marketing. Right? So they'll say, oh, I think this brand. But if you push a little more and say, okay, but have you bought from that brand personally? They say, no, I haven't, but I think it is a good brand.
True. Yeah.
And then say, okay, do you own saris? No, I don't, but my mom owns. So a lot of women who are still learning about saris, who aren't very sure if this is an attire that is an expression of their own personality, right? Because all clothing and attire is that. So they're still in the learning phase of their journey. I feel they haven't discovered us yet, right? And there was a time in India where you could get away without marketing because your name and word of mouth would carry you. Now I think what's happening is those who have the budgets, and there are bigger brands that have, like their entire marketing budget is probably my whole top line, right? Because they are funded by investors and sort of like international investors, and they just have a cash burn theory. So they're able to sort of burn cash in order to build awareness. So we, as an old brand doing things the right way, are going up against the new age companies who have access to capital, who have investors who are happy to sort of fund a unprofitable cash burn business for the next period of time, in hopes that, okay, let's see if you're able to get over the hump, and then you're able to then shift or pivot into a more sustainable business model. But in that interim period, what happens to brands like us that are trying to do things the right way? We can't burn money the way that they burn money. We've always been a cash flow focused business, sustainable, profit oriented business, family run business with family values, which basically means that I'll have a threshold to say, okay, listen, quality below this is not a quality I am comfortable putting my brand name on it and providing to the customers. There are n number of brands out there which will say, man, this is pure chiffon. And I know that it's not, it's a polyester and chiffon mix, right? Or it's a polyester and silk mix. But those brands can get away with it. The reputational damage to them is not much because they're probably a startup that came up 2 or 3 years ago, or they're a small business that just came up now and they can afford to get away with it. The reputational risk is not that high. Versus for heritage brands like us, our name is what matters. Our name is our brand promise, right? And so from that standpoint, I started to see that, okay, the newer consumer segment has a different way in which they consume content. And we need to also keep up with the times and build from our authentic core and say this is what Nalli stands for, and this is what we have to offer. If you were to buy, for example, measure for measure, say a product from Nalli and a product from somewhere else, right? This brand, let's say, says, hey, listen, I'm giving you a pure silk for 100 rupees. Probably they bought it, they purchased it for 30 rupees.
Yeah.
And then plus 10 rupees of marketing, plus 10 rupees of like customer acquisition, plus, right? Listing fees, this, that, and everything.
Yeah.
Versus, or they have, investors who are fueling their losses. So actually it might be costing them much more than 100 rupees, but they are running at a loss in order to build a customer base and to get conversions. Versus us who says, listen, if I'm charging you 100 rupees, the product cost itself is 70 or 75 rupees. I make very low margins on it, right? I work on volumes because I work on the fact that, listen, if this is pure silk, I'll say, madam, you cannot get anything which is for less than this amount, which someone is telling you is pure silk. Yeah. Either you're getting cheated or there's something out there, right?
Yeah.
And many times when we hear this from our customers, we are always curious to find out, okay, how is it that they're able to get this product that they claim is pure silk? 99 out of 100 times we find out that the customer has been duped, that the customer has actually been taken for a ride. It's not pure silk. But that 1 out of 100 times we find out that either the business is fueling losses, right? And so they are selling it at below cost, or sometimes we find out that, okay, there is somebody in the market who's innovating. Then we go and we identify those weavers, those artisans, and we say, look, we would like to partner with you because you've clearly found a way to innovate. You're bringing out high quality products, high quality designs at a price point that is very competitive. So how would you like to, sort of work with Nalli, and we'll give you some of our designs. You can show us your designs, and then we'll sort of make that a mutually rewarding partnership. So we always keep our eye on improving our business. And I think that's what kept us in business for this long. But yes, the business fundamentals are strong. Product is king. We work on a low margin. We work on everyday fair price. When you work on a low margin, high volume strategy, you do not have the margins to spend foolishly or to overspend, I'll put it, on things like all the bells and whistles and the marketing. Because like I said, if you were to purchase a product for 100 rupees, I probably paid the supplier 70 rupees or 75 rupees, right? In order to get that product into your hand. Versus you pay 100 rupees on any other platform, the worth of the product itself is likely to be around 30 rupees or 40 rupees, right? Versus 70, 75. And the 70, 75, a lot of times, even if you were to go directly to Kanjivaram or Dharmavaram or, any of these places, you wouldn't be able to get it as a layman because we have a certain economy of scale. We're able to sort of buy 8 pieces from the whole loom, right?
Okay.
Give the design, he dyes the yarn for 8, he sets up the handloom for 8. I'm able to buy it at 8. I'm able to give him a certain number of orders and say, boss, because they are getting these number of orders. Now, your margin per piece, can you reduce that a little bit? Because on an absolute terms, I'm just going to give you more orders.
Yeah.
So these are the efficiencies of scale that we are able to constantly innovate and work with our weavers and our artisans in a fair manner, so that the whole business ecosystem benefits, but at the same time, the consumer walks away feeling that if I have paid $100, I have got something worth $100.
Yeah.
I probably would not be able to get something of this quality elsewhere. But that business system comes under strain when you start looking at, okay, there are others in the market who are overspending on marketing. So now that's one of the things that we're looking at. How do we then keep up with the times? How do we then work with our authentic core in order to bring that across to consumers, educate consumers, make them more aware. And then I feel that, the right consumers will always self-select.
Yeah. And I think that's the USP of your brand, right? I mean, if like, as you rightly said, if anyone knows the real quality, then of course they know that, this is like it has the quality. And of course,
exactly. Yeah. Like a lot of consumers, right? Like who are, like I said, who are early in that process where they're learning. they rely on the salesperson, right? If it is a physical brick and mortar. If it is online, then you probably rely on the veracity of what they have indicated in the product description. But if you see a power user, someone who owns so many saris, buys saris, knows her saris. I give you an example. The high-end Banaras saris that you see, right? Brocade Banaras. A power user will look at the product and say, all this is fine. She'll flip it and she'll inspect the back side, right? Because when you see how it is woven on the back, then is this really a handloom or is this a power loom? Is this a pekwa or a khadwa weave, right? These are things that you can't see just directly from the surface of the product. And you can ask a salesperson, but how do you know that salesperson is not just trying to close that sale? Yes, ma'am, this is handloom, right? But how do you trust? So this is the place where brands like ours come in, right? Because we have a reputational risk. We will never play, with the brand promise. We will never play with the product promise. And I think that is the USP of it.
That is the USP. Yeah, that's rightly said. And Lavanya, what's your favorite sari? In like which kind of?
I have a soft corner for Kanjivaram. Always Kanjivaram.
Okay.
And because it's somewhere, my like generationally, we are not a business family. We're not traders. We are actually a family of weavers. Our community is the Padmashali community. And the Padmashalis are weavers who emigrated from Andhra many years ago, around 1800s during a drought. And then we all emigrated and we migrated to Kanjivaram and then we settled in that belt. And then those weavers became the Kanjivaram weavers. And then that's where my family's history and heritage and everything comes from. So I have a soft corner towards that. But I think I am lucky to be surrounded by very young and passionate sort of people in my workplace, right? Like designers, the girls in marketing, the girls in design. It's a very, very sort of, they've got a lot of women in the workforce. So they keep, and younger women, right? So they keep pushing me to say, maybe you should try something other than Kanjivaram. Maybe you should try our, embroidered lace collection. Maybe you should try our organza collection, our digital prints. And to be honest, more and more, I'm sort of enjoying this aspect of my, they call it reverse mentorship in the US and abroad. I don't know what you call it. I mean, these are all sort of business terminology, but I'm quite enjoying it. I'm enjoying that process of discovery where younger women are sort of like, pulling me along to say, no, you've got to style it a different way now. And that's how all the cool kids do it. So I think, it's a phase in my journey that I'm really quite grateful that I'm here and quite enjoying and looking forward to.
That's interesting. I think you have pretty much answered this, but yeah, I mean, how are you keeping pace with the industry trends? Anything else you want to add in this?
The biggest thing that I would say, and for anyone who's listening to this, right, whether you're working in a corporate or you're starting out on your own, you're a freelancer, you're an entrepreneur, doesn't matter. The only way to keep up with the trends is to be extremely plugged into the consumer. The more consumer-centric you can be, the more you will understand. In Western societies, it's a little bit different. So if you look at Western wear, the whole ecosystem is very evolved and quite sophisticated. There are those, I would say, guardians of good taste, right? So these seminal brands who have a disproportionate influence on the fashion industry. So these few movers and shakers within the fashion industry, supported by all of the media houses who are also consolidated and concentrated, right? So they start first, they set the trends.
Correct. Yeah.
Once they set the trends, then it goes out, then you see it on the runway. Then all of the next stage brands, the Sheins, the Zaras, and all of them sort of like, catch up with it. And then before you know it, as a consumer, everywhere you see a coordinated, coordinated effort. right?
Yeah.
Like peplums are in trend, then cutouts are in trend, then something else is in trend. So it's a very coordinated effort made by a few movers and shakers in a highly mature, sophisticated, and consolidated industry.
Yeah.
Versus in India, and especially in things like ethnic wear, where it is a fragmented industry, where the power is really with the creative artisan, right? The karigars, the artisans, these are the guys who are creative entrepreneurs. They come up with the designs, and there are so many of them. Right? If you look at the art and craft wealth of India, there are so many of them, and the media portrays them as downtrodden and sort of that's not really the case. If you look at the ones who truly are making a mark in the industry, they are top of their game, right? And those guys are the ones who are always plugged into the consumer. And so they're always asking us. It's a very symbiotic relationship. Us as a brand, right? We design a lot of our own products, but every once in a while we experiment as well, right? With products that are many of our weavers are those who've been with us generations. I am the third or fifth generation in the company. They are the fifth generation in their field, right? And so now after generations here, the two of us are sort of like speaking. So I would ask him, it's a very symbiotic relationship. I'd ask him and say, hey, listen, what is in trend? And he'll say, there's these other brands. I experimented something different, and they are saying, make the booty smaller, make it smaller, make it smaller. They're saying tone on tone silk jacquard seems to be going really well. Pastel shades seem to be taking off. People are moving away from that core white contrast pallu. So then I hear from him. Then I'll say, okay, let's experiment. We come up with a few designs. We test it in the stores. Then I ask my salespeople, what's selling, what's not selling. Then they tell me, customers are really liking your pastel range. We didn't think that because Kanjivaram historically favors the very bright, rich, deep colors, but the jewel tones and so on. But this seems to be really in demand. So in the end, your consumers will tell you, right? Your suppliers will tell you, your weavers will tell you, your consumers will tell you. But the idea is you just need to be plugged into the trend.
True. Great. And what can be expected from your organization in the coming years? And what are your expansion plans, or you have a plans to increase your international presence also?
Yes, in fact, we are, as we speak, so my father is still very much in the business. He's 60 plus. But in fact, my grandfather is 80 plus, and he is also still in the business. So we come from that generation of family values where we believe that, you work till your very last breath. And there's this very lovely concept in Japanese culture. They call it ikigai, which is basically your reason for living, your purpose in life. And so we all follow that mindset of, there's no concept of you work till you're 60 and then you retire. As long as you're able, you're always contributing and giving back to society and producing in some way. So my father is right now, as we speak, he's in Australia. We'll be setting up our first store in Australia very soon. Well, before the year is done. We have about 9+ stores internationally. Got about 4 of them in the US, Canada, London, Singapore, and then now we'll be opening up Dubai, and now we'll be opening up in Australia. So wherever we see a strong Indian diaspora, we find that there's always a passion and a love for well-made Indian products. And saris, of course, is the quintessential sort of Indian product.
Yeah, true. Great, amazing, Lavanya. What makes a brand successful? Like, if you have to explain it in your own way, what do you think? What makes a brand successful?
The nice thing over the years is, I think what I've come to realize is there are many different business models now. There are many different ways in which a brand can become successful. More so now in 2023 than was the case in, say, 2003, right? No, 2005, when I was entering the workforce. And that's quite heartening because there's no cookie cutter, right? There's no one approach. There are some, for example, back then we didn't, like I said, we didn't have the startup ecosystem or startup culture. Now that it's there, I think there is a portion of society and of business that believes that, okay, that has a very cash rich but time poor mindset that
Mm-hmm.
says, listen, compared to heritage brands that have made it successful after 20, 30, 40 years, and then they continue to retain their market leadership and they're 100 years in the running, we don't want to waste all that time. But what we have is money, so we'll kind of give you the money, but push you to sort of, like, can you grow? Can you double your top line every year? Can you triple your top line every year? Can you can burn as much money as you want, but then I want to see the burn rate also come down over this time period. So these are business models which is very different from, say, a family run business or a founder driven business, a founder proprietor driven business, where they put their own money into it, their own savings into it. They are very frugal and they have a very strong focus on the cash flow and on the bottom line. And they look at the internal generation of funds in order to fuel their future success. I have seen both sides. I worked at Mintra, I worked at McKinsey, I'm a graduate from Harvard Business. I've seen all sides of how large corporates work, have access to public markets, how startups work, have access to investor money, how family businesses work, right? Have only access to their own money. We don't have diversified portfolios with all eggs in that one basket. And the one thing that I would tell to business owners is, don't spend beyond your means. It's never a good sign, even if you have investors. Try to be very meticulous and model out how you want your business to, what path you want your business to take. And then identify the right stakeholders, right? Whether it's debt financing, equity financing, investors, whatever it is. So I would say the only advice that I would give is be very focused. You can build a strong business in a number of different ways, but be very focused in what you want to do, what you don't want to do. Have your boundary conditions. Like I said, at Nalli, we never discount, but we have our boundary conditions. And we say, I never want a consumer to walk away thinking, oh no, if I had waited 5 more days, they might have gone on discount.
Right? Correct. Yeah.
So I also don't want them to walk away saying, oh, look at this, I overpaid for this. Yes, they put it in a beautiful bag and they put some, like butter paper wrapping on it, and they put a sticker on it, and they made an Instagram reels about the unboxing video. But at the end of it, the sari that I wear, I should have only paid 30 rupees for it. Instead, I paid 100 rupees for it. So you as a business owner need to know what are your core values and
that's
what
very
are
important.
your boundaries. So to me, I don't do the butter paper and the gold sticker and the Instagram video. But when that lady goes home, she says, wow, I would never be able to spend 20,000 rupees to get a pure silk, kadwa weave, all over jal, this kind of a sari. It's an heirloom. I'm able to afford it, something that is so high quality, and I can pass it on to my, to the next generation. And so that's where we are. Like, we build an heirloom business, and we want to make high quality products accessible, right? And we don't do that by dropping the quality, because a lot of people, when you say accessible, you think, okay, make it cheap.
Correct.
We don't do that. We say make it accessible. If you have to use pure silk because it's a high quality product, use pure silk. Don't do silk and cotton, silk and polyester. Do pure silk. If you want pure zari, use pure zari. If you wanted handloom, do it on the handloom. If you wanted hand woven, do it hand woven. And then it is our duty as business owners to innovate and say, okay, without dropping the quality, without dropping the design threshold, how can I innovate to make it as efficient as possible so that the maximum savings I pass on to the consumer? And if that means that I don't tie up with, sort of large scale marketing agencies that will probably give me a retainer for like 8 lakhs every month and say, boss, you give me 8 lakhs, I will do the marketing for you. Okay, but then that 8 lakhs has to come out of somewhere, right? I need to it has to come out of my bottom line. It has to come out of my top line. So I would rather say, no, I'll keep a small team, frugal team, flat hierarchy, and build up my own team, run it like a family business, and keep my consumer at the core of it.
Great. Lavanya, last thing I want to know, what do you think the retail industry can do to encourage, more women to take on leadership role? What's your intake on that?
Okay, so I would start by actually, and maybe this is to you also, not just the retail industry, but to everyone, even in media, journalists, and folks in your own position of influence and power. I would ask us all to ask the question: why are women dropping out of the workforce first? Right? It's because what a lot of times I hear very shallow responses from my contemporaries and colleagues to say, "Oh, women are working out of it because they are not interested enough, they are not motivated enough, they are not." Ask deeper, right? That's a judgment. Oh, women are not doing because of ask deeper. Why are they? Then look at the women who stayed. Look at the women who actually made it, and say, what is it that sets apart these women from the others? Right? Is it and what we I challenge you to do it, and to everybody who's watching this, right? What you will discover is that women are dropping out of the workforce with a heavy heart, not because they want to. Nobody, if you go to them and say, hey, would you rather be financially dependent and lose your self-esteem and know that you have all this education and qualification, but you're giving up on it, or you're going to reduce your ambition and do like a part-time job? Or would you rather have a fulfilling career, right? Be recognized by your peers, be financially independent? Nobody is going to say, I would rather be financially dependent, take some part-time job and do. Nobody. So why is it that when they don't want to do it, they are doing it? They are forced to do it. And why are they forced to do it? Because the societal burden on women is far greater than it is on men, right? And I'll ask a simple question. Let's say you are a double income household. Husband and wife are equally qualified. This is a scenario we all know in urban cities. Maybe they both went to IIT, they both went to IIMs, equally qualified, right? And they both get into very high profile organizations. And let's say they have a child, the child is sick, and the domestic help has called that morning and said, ma'am, I'm not coming in today. Between the husband and wife, who do you think is going to stay back?
Generally,
so when you ask
yourself,
right? Why? So now you tell me, why is it that women are dropping out of the workforce? Is it because they don't have the ambition, which is something that I hear? Is it because, oh, they're not smart enough? Also, I've heard this. Is it because, oh, they don't want it enough? I've heard this too. No. Ask yourself what is holding them back, right? Because as a nation and as a society, we need to come forward.
That's
Policymakers alone can't do it. Corporates alone can't do it. Right? The individual, but it impacts 50% of our productive workforce. So we really need to come together as a nation and recognize at each of our levels. First, understand the problem without judgment. Why is it happening? Only then, once you accept it, you're not in denial of it, can you come up with a solution that is right, that is solving the right root cause. And I would say, we need to look at other countries or organizations that, even in our own country, organizations that do this well. How have they been able to achieve this? What kinds of policies do they have in place? How have they mitigated the institutional voids, the structural deficiencies that are there, which happen to impact women more so than they do men, right? And specifically women who choose to have children, because that's where your responsibility grows. More women than men are in caregiving positions, right? There are more women who are being forced by their immediate ecosystem, by society at large, right? Like either their mums or their mother-in-laws or someone or the other is telling them, but the child is sick, no, mother has to be home, right? So they get a lot of social pressure. At the same time, they get pressure from people even beyond their immediate circle, right? Neighbors or somebody else who says, oh, look at her, left the husband to go and take care of the kid, and while she's going out to work, so selfish, right? So there is, from every dimension, when that woman is getting pounded, most women will give in to the system. So I look at it and say it is a systemic failure, And
Yeah.
we need to attack it at all levels, right? From corporate to policies to the individual level as well.
That's the mindset of society, basically, right? I mean,
the mindset of society as well, right? And like even to educate the older generation to say, listen, stop holding back your daughters.
Yeah.
Right? Instead, build up your sons to be self-sufficient.
Yeah,
build up
exactly.
Your,
yeah. That's a very good point, Lavanya. And thank you so much. I mean, it was very insightful, and I personally just love, listening to you on so many good things on this Women Day special. And pleasure talking to you, and all the best for everything that you are coming up with.
Thank you. Thank you very much.